Hello everybody, welcome back to Out of Body's 31 Days of Halloween. In today's episode of Haunted Memphis, I'm going to be talking about the Sterick building, which is a very old building in Memphis, actually a tower as well, that is still vacant to this day and has its supposed hauntings. So if you'd like to hear more about that, keep watching. So the Sterick building opened in 1930 and it was known as the Queen of Memphis at that time because it was the largest building, tallest building I should say, in Memphis at that time, and actually also the tallest in Tennessee from the year it opened in 1930 all the way up until 1957. So the building served as an office building. As you can see in the pictures, it was very, very tall, had a lot of floors. It was actually 365 feet tall and had 29 above ground floors. And as you can see in some of the older pictures here, it's literally like the tallest thing by far in the landscape. You can see like everything else is just way, way, way shorter. Apparently the building was very fancy on the inside. As you can see on the outside, it was kind of Gothic style. Apparently when it opened, the lobby was decorated with pink and black marble. So apparently the inside was very, very fancy, very luxurious for back then. So something I found interesting about the building itself is that they had built on these 9-foot Gothic spires on 3 floors of the building on the outside. And apparently they had to be removed in 1947 because they kept getting struck by lightning. So the building went through a couple of different paint jobs in the 1980s. Apparently they painted it this kind of sandblasted yellow color, kind of probably a baby puke yellow or something is what I would call it. And apparently people didn't like that, and just the way they started renovating it, they put like carpet in there, and I guess apparently that's kind of what made the building go down in value and people started moving out. So just 5 years after they did that paint job, every tenant in that building was moved out. And the building is still vacant today. Apparently the reason for that, which I'm still not quite understanding myself, but I will just kind of explain it, maybe you guys will understand it. The land where the building was built was once owned by Napoleon Hill, and his heirs formed the company Sterick, which is a combination of their names. So Sterick technically owns the land, but apparently the governor at the time, around when it was built, negotiated a 99-year lease. So I don't know if that was like meaning that he was negotiating for businesses to be able to lease out the property for 99 years and then it would go back to ownership, the Sterick company. I'm not for sure on that, but apparently that is why it's still sitting empty, is because anyone who leases the property now and renovates it will no longer own it in 2028, and that's only 10 years from now. So in 10 years, the ownership is apparently going to go back to Sterick, which I don't know who has that now, who's in charge of that now, but apparently it's going to go back to them, and who knows what will happen then. So it may be empty for a long time coming. So as far as the hauntings go, supposedly there were actually 2 different suicides that took place in this building when it was still in operation. I also read online that there was a 3rd possible suicide, but I will get into those here in a minute. So the first suicide that took place was a woman. Apparently her father had chosen her fiance to marry, and she was not in love with that fiance. She was in love with someone else and didn't want to marry him. And so there was this whole feud, I guess, and she ended up jumping out of a window off the building to her death. I couldn't really find what year that happened. I assume it was probably in the night, somewhere between 1930 and 1950. The next suicide happened in the 1980s. It was 1981. Apparently, a man was in the building attempting to assault a woman. He had chased her down and pulled her into a vacant office. And luckily, she had been screaming, and some people in the offices above actually heard her and called security. Security got to her in time, and she was able to get away. But then the man ran away as well. And after he ran away, the security was able to close off 2 of the exits And he then began to apparently act like a wild animal because he was trapped inside. And so then he apparently broke one of the windows in one of the other offices and got out on the ledge. Now, nobody really knows if he was intending to jump off or not. There's one witness that says that they saw him clinging to the ledge before he fell off. Almost sounds like he broke the window, got out on the ledge, probably just to hide from the police, or just to, maybe he was going to get out there and, you know, try to bargain with them and say, I'll jump if you throw me in jail, if you don't throw me in, you know, I don't know, maybe he was going to do something like that, some kind of bargaining. Nonetheless, he ended up falling to his death. Apparently he fell 100 feet down to the next roof of the building. Apparently employees that were in the building at the time on the 20th floor ended up hearing his screams as he fell past their windows, which that is very, very eerie, very terrible to witness something like that. So the other possible suicide was apparently a dentist, or someone who is said to be a dentist, who decided to jump out a window. Nobody really knows why he did, but his death on his death certificate was ruled a suicide from jumping out of the window. So with all of that being said, you can probably guess the kind of hauntings that are going on around there, the kind of things that people might be experiencing. So the employees that were still there when the building was still in operation after these deaths, apparently they said that they at times would hear someone screaming outside their windows as if they were falling past them outside of their windows. Which that, if I witnessed that, oh my goodness, that is so scary. And right before the building closed, the few tenants that were still in the building working claimed to hear people in the unoccupied offices, the vacant offices. Apparently they would hear people working and they would see lights turning on and off even though there was nobody in those offices. So who knows, sometimes in those kind of instances, I'm not sure that it's really people's spirits that are still attached to it. It could be that, obviously. But a lot of times in places that are very highly populated or in places where something very tragic happened, it's not always the case that someone who died, that their actual spirit is there. Sometimes it's that some of their leftover energy is there, if that makes sense. Because especially when something tragic happens, there's usually a lot of energy left over after that happens. And so that's why a lot of times, as an example, if someone jumps out a window, a lot of times the energy of the tragedy that was left over from that will continue to repeat the jumping out the window. So a lot of times if there was a house or a building where something like that happened, people later on will witness seeing the person jumping out the window again, even though there's nobody really doing it again. The person already died. I may do a video on that in the future, kind of the difference between an actual spirit or entity and a apparition or leftover energy that is left in a space. So if you're thoroughly confused by that, just don't worry about it. I'll talk about it in another video, but that's just a theory of mine. I kind of feel like in this case it might not actually be the spirits of the person that are still there. I hope not. I hope they're not reliving that fall over and over again. I'd like to think that possibly it's just some energy that was left over that hasn't been reunited with their spirit in the afterlife, and so it just lingers there and just repeats over and over again what happened. Alright, so that is the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Give this a like if you did, and I hope you guys have a great night, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!